Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I conclude my winding up of this debate, first allow me to congratulate again the very hard-working staff at the Ministry of Finance who have made this budget the success that it is. Madam Speaker, I have listened to members opposite for the last 4 days. And one thing has come across that has clearly been lost on members opposite. And that is, Madam Speaker, that this budget debate is not an election campaign. That came to an end on the 10th of August when this PNM government was returned for a second term. I observe, Madam Speaker, that members opposite wasted virtually all of their speaking time engaging in a futile attempt to revisit irrelevant issues that they had raised during the 2020 general election, which they lost. It should have been obvious to them that all of those issues that they raised had already been discounted by the population. So what was the point? What was the point, Madam Speaker? Members opposite seem not to appreciate that the electorate had already pronounced on these matters and that they had failed to convince the population that they had a better plan or that they were a better alternative to the PNM. In fact, Madam Speaker, I was quite astonished. Some members were so misguided that they went as far back as the 2015 election campaign, and even before that, which they also lost. Not one member on the other side proposed any meaningful alternative to our fiscal measures. Nor did they speak to what they thought the level of government expenditure should be or should not be in 2021. Or what the measures for fiscal 2021 should be. For example, not a single member on that side rendered an opinion as to whether we as a country should run a fiscal deficit in 2021 to stimulate the economy or not, as the case may be. Whether in the face of COVID-19 we should engage in demand-side economics as a country, based on the principle espoused by the economist John Maynard Keynes in response to the Great Depression of the 1930s, which is that the demand for goods and services is the primary driver of economic activity, or whether we should follow a supply-side economic model popularized in the 1980s as Reaganomics, where it was believed that tax cuts for business provide incentives to produce economic benefits that somehow trickle down into the overall economy, or whether we should follow a classic economic model promoted by Adam Smith, who proposed the idea of an invisible hand, the tendency of free markets to regulate themselves by means of competition, supply and demand, and self-interest. Not one of them raised any of these issues, Madam Speaker. Not one of them proposed anything in terms how we should manage the economy going forward in the face of COVID-19. And if any of them had bothered to pay attention, they would have realized that we on this side, unlike them, are not slaves to any particular economic model, but rather in this budget, which, as the Prime Minister has said, has received universal acclamation from all sectors of the population, rather in this budget, to kickstart the economy, we have utilized a judicious mix of all three economic models. And that is why this budget has been acclaimed by all and sundry as a good budget, because there's something in this budget for everyone. And let me give you some examples, Madam Speaker. Low-income taxpayers, everyone earning $7,000 a month or less, now have an additional $250 per month every month in their pockets, and that is demand-side economics, Madam Speaker. A $750 million injection into the economy. By way of another example, the sale of fuel will now be regulated by competition and a free market. That is classic economics. And tax incentives for businesses, such as those designed to stimulate construction and investment in technology, that is supply-side economics. And that is what I expect to hear in a budget debate. Sadly, we heard none of this. All we heard were the usual tired, old, stale, populist platitudes and rhetoric, the usual puerile and baseless allegations backed up with no facts, which has failed to work for them in the last 2 general elections. There was no economic analysis, no econometrics, nothing to look at our situation as a country and what we should do to go forward. Just move along and irrelevance on that side. Indeed, Madam Speaker, suggestions about what should be the approach to the 2021 budget came from elsewhere, not inside here. One former Minister of Finance suggested that we have played it too safe and have been too conservative, and that the better approach would be to engage in large-scale borrowing to stimulate the productive sector, taking our debt to GDP ratio up to 100% from the current 80%. In other words, a former Minister of Finance has proposed we should borrow a further $30 billion in 2021 instead of the planned $8 billion and spend our way out of the recessionary effects of COVID-19. That is one option. Other economists have suggested we should spend a further $5 to $6 billion in 2021 on an expanded social safety net, taking expenditure up to $55 billion instead of the $49 billion that we have planned. That is another option. These are all very serious alternatives, very serious options, which we have considered in formulating this budget, and which we may revisit in due course as the virus continues its economic rampage and the full effects of the pandemic unfold. But one thing we will not do is surrender to sterile debate, such as I've heard for the last 4 days, or be inflexible in our policies, since we, in this PNM, are in the business of government for the long term. Madam Speaker, it is a tradition that the Leader of the Opposition is given the same amount of time as the Minister of Finance to respond to the budget statement. I have had the Leader of the Opposition's response analyzed. And in that 3-hour disjointed response, the Leader of the Opposition made just 2 points. 2, that's all. One was that the Minister of Finance was hiding the latest annual report of the National Insurance Board in some pursuit of hiding unemployment figures. And secondly, that ministers were living large at taxpayers' expense. The allegation regarding the National Insurance Board report was, of course, preposterous. Parliament was dissolved earlier this year before the report could be laid. And further, with respect to that report, there are a number of serious issues that need to be resolved with the National Insurance Board, including how to treat with migrant workers, what the retirement age should be, and what should be done with the self-employed. These are serious matters, Madam Speaker, for serious people to look at. There is nothing in that report that speaks to official statistics on employment levels. With respect to the second point, about ministers living it up, which in my view is merely a weak attempt at distraction from the internal issues within the opposition, where there is an unprecedented national billboard campaign being conducted, not by the PNM, but by members of the UNC. Not we, Madam Speaker. It is former UNC ministers were engaged in an unprecedented national billboard campaign calling on the leader of the opposition to step down, having taken that member's party to so many electoral defeats over the last 5 years. 12, I think. But for the leader of the opposition, I would say, Madam Speaker, I would refer to the old European proverb that people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And if you can't take it, don't throw it. And I therefore commend the leader of the opposition, who as Prime Minister insisted on retaining travel benefits for MPs, to inquire of the opposition chief whip, the Member of Parliament for Pointe-à-Pierre, as to why, since his leader claims to be, that member's leader claims to be concerned for the poor and downtrodden, and how it go look, how our concessions go look. Perhaps the leader of the opposition can inquire of the member for Pointe-à-Pierre as to why he used his tax exemption privileges to purchase in 2019 the most expensive car of all members of Parliament, probably in the history of this Parliament, Madam Speaker. A 4-liter Mercedes-Benz AMG G63, valued at $2.3 million. And why that opposition member accessed a benefit of $1.4 million in tax and duty concessions, 4 times more than the benefits accessed by most other MPs for a car, which he hardly ever drives to Parliament, if at all. And I take responsibility for my words, Madam Speaker. Further, Madam Speaker, that multi-million-dollar luxury car purchased by the member for Pointe-à-Pierre, the UNC member, was imported straight out of New Zealand and not through the local agent. And it begs the question as to whether such an approach to such an expensive car purchase avoids the requirement for submission of a declaration of source of funds to the FIU. Because, Madam Speaker, if you go through a local car dealer, you have to fill out a source of funds. But if you bring it in straight, you may not have to do that. The other question I would put, Madam Speaker, and this is a general question, not thrown particularly at the member for Pointe-à-Pierre, that if a car is purchased by an MP with a substantial benefit in kind, such as $1.4 million in tax concessions, but is used almost exclusively by an unrelated private citizen from day one, is that a breach of the spirit, purpose, and intent of travel benefits afforded to MPs, Madam Speaker? I ask the leader of the opposition to reflect on those questions. And as for the member for Oropouche East.
Madam Speaker, I think you made a ruling on this earlier.
Please continue, Minister.
Thank you. As for the member for Oropouche East, who has lived up to his reputation, at least in my opinion, of being a political comedian, Madam Speaker.
1 minute, please.
This is an opposition
1 minute,
MP.
please, Minister of Finance. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Member for Oropouche East, an opposition MP, on a salary of just $17,000 per month, with no other obvious source of income, has purchased a Jaguar and a Mercedes-Benz within the last 3 years, and has the temerity to throw shade at the rest of us, Madam Speaker. I advise the leader of the opposition to look within her ranks rather than throwing shade on this side. And Madam Speaker, in my opinion, it is political hypocrisy like this, among other things, that caused the 2 back-to-back election defeats of the UNC. Another matter, Madam Speaker, of which I heard nothing from members opposite, and something that the leader of the opposition flirts with quite irresponsibly at times, is the question of our exchange rate. I'd have liked to hear a discussion about that. But instead, Madam Speaker, we hear vague utterances such as, let the market determine our exchange rate. And you get the impression that when these statements are made, members opposite are simply mouthing the words of interest groups. We, on this side, have been told, always by those who can afford an inflationary spike, that our exchange rate is uncompetitive. We should devalue our currency. Several experts keep pushing us to do so, claiming that if we did not do so, our foreign reserves would evaporate in short order. One can conclude, however, Madam Speaker, that some of the arguments advanced about devaluation come from those who are hoarding US dollars and wish to make windfall profits. I would have liked to have a discussion about that. No, we heard nothing of this, Madam Speaker. And just let me say, in passing on this issue, that proponents of devaluation argue that it improves competitiveness by increasing the price of imports and making exports cheaper. But it is argued by others that this is a fallacy because it takes no account of the increased cost of local goods and services that arise from an exchange rate devaluation, and that the real result of a devaluation is a reduction in real incomes, inflation, and poverty, Madam Speaker. That is why this government has so far chosen the road of exchange rate stability to minimize inflation and keep consumer prices down. That is the kind of discussion that I would have expected to hear in a budget debate, rather than fatuous and baseless claims of geographic discrimination and wild and unfounded allegations of impropriety, such as those that routinely emanate from the member for Appropriation East without a shred of evidence. Let me move now to one of those wild statements from Appropriation East, Madam Speaker. And that is that we have slashed the police budget and we have brought the police to their knees. I say to that, Madam Speaker, that that is nonsense. At $49.6 billion, the overall budget for 2021 is 6% less than the original budget of $53 billion for 2020. In addition, total government revenue for 2020 is $13 billion less than estimated at the beginning of the year pre-COVID. Allocations have thus been reduced across the board, consistent with reality. Money doesn't grow on trees, Madam Speaker. It is a matter of public record that COVID-19 has caused not just us in Trinidad and Tobago, but every country in the world to suffer a serious loss of revenue in 2020. And 2021 will be no exception. And let me go to the facts. I am advised by the Budgets Division in the Ministry of Finance that the TTPS requested $418 million for goods and services in fiscal 2020 and received $390 million, or 93% of what it requested. Further, the allocation for goods and services for the TTPS in 2021 is $335 million. And we in the Ministry of Finance, encourage the TTPS to apply for that money as soon as they can, so that we can make whatever adjustment is required and possible at the mid-year review stage, which is normal, standard, and traditional in this budgetary process, Madam Speaker. After all, what we are dealing with here are estimates of expenditure. So at this time, we have allocated $335 million to the police for goods and services. And I want to repeat, I encourage the TTPS to apply for that money so that we can make whatever adjustments are required and are possible at the mid-year review. So all of this carrying on by the opposition is just histrionics, Madam Speaker. There's some other matters that require clarification. I have observed commentators making inaccurate statements about the reference to the retirement age in the budget speech. What I actually said was that in the context of the known shortfall between national insurance contributions and benefits, there is a need to seriously examine the question of increasing the retirement age to 65. Contrary to allegations made, therefore, by Cover South and others, that does not equate to a unilateral carte blanche adjustment by the Minister of Finance of the retirement age. All I said is that we need to look at it because there's a gross discrepancy between contributions and benefits at the National Insurance Board, and we need to do something about it. I've also heard the leader of the opposition and the member for Orapuchi's claim they don't know what the government spent money on for COVID-19 relief. And because they don't know, they have demanded a forensic audit. This inaccuracy, Madam Speaker, has even found itself into the editorial pages of a daily newspaper, despite the fact, as the Prime Minister pointed out, that on numerous occasions we have given full details of the areas of expenditure involved in COVID-19 relief and fiscal stimulus, most recently in the 2021 budget statement. So for those on the other side, and for those who like to write editorials, I will repeat what is on pages 7 and 8 of the budget statement. A social safety net for the most vulnerable households and businesses was established. It was appropriately targeted at a cost of $6 billion, of which we have spent $4 billion so far. We are leaving no one behind. We established a social and humanitarian support program in which 25,101 grants have been paid under the food support program. 50,904 grants have been paid to individuals who lost income. 20,500 grants have been paid to households which receive meals from the school feeding program. 42,451 grants have been paid as income support. 33,813 individuals who lost their jobs or had their incomes reduced have received 81,179 grants, amounting to $129.8 million in salary relief. 2,818 grants were paid to senior citizens who had not yet received their pensions. 488 grants were paid to individuals who had not yet received their disability assistance grants. 1,400 emergency hampers were provided to families in urgent need. 25,000 food vouchers, which included fresh produce, were provided to families. 3,770 families received rental assistance. 30 million was given to religious bodies for food distribution, which in turn distributed 49,330 hampers. Fuel grants in the amount of 2,000 for maxi taxis and $750 for taxis were given out. 1,720 grants for maxi taxis, 253 grants for taxis. 343 of our artists have received grants of 5,000. 300 nationals who were stranded overseas have received cash grants. 359,000 cloth face masks were distributed. 25,095 individuals received accelerated income tax refunds. 5,010 small and medium enterprises with a per VAT threshold of up to 500,000 received in cash accelerated VAT refunds. 460 companies with up to 10 million in refunds per VAT cycle received fully tradable VAT bonds amounting to $3 billion. 142 small and medium enterprises received zero interest government guaranteed loans. 50 business owners have received loans under the credit union facility. 5,000 microenterprises will receive grants under the microenterprise grant program. 124 importers of essential items have received $75 million US through the special import forex window. And payments to contractors and suppliers in an amount of $2 billion. This is in the budget speech, Madam Speaker. Yet they want an audit. They don't know what we spent the money on. And as I said, it finds its way into the newspapers. And this is the fourth time I have come in this parliament to give a detailed list of what we spent the money on. How much more time do I have, Madam Speaker?
Your time expires. You have roughly 20 minutes. You're
Thank
spared
you very much,
5:26:06.
Thank you very much. Another point made by members opposite is whether our estimates are realistic. What I can say, Madam Speaker, with respect to that point, is that even in the face of increased uncertainty created by COVID, there will be vigilance and increased vigilance in 2021 by the Inland Revenue Division. Since it has come to our attention that suppliers of goods and services to government do not always report the income they receive from government to the Board of Inland Revenue. They simply bank the money without reporting it. This must stop and will stop in 2021. Whether you supply a $10 ballpoint pen to government, or you construct a multi-million-dollar secondary school, we will take steps to ensure that there is a proper correlation between money received from government and income declared to the Board of Inland Revenue. So we are going on an aggressive drive to see how best we can deal with leakage of tax revenue in 2021. Let me also deal with some inaccurate statements made by various members. I will start with the member for Barataria San Juan, who screamed that it is illegal to use stamp duty assessment to put values on properties because, according to the various laws associated with valuations and property tax, we must use the annual rental value, and we must not use stamp duty to determine the capital value of land and property to determine property tax. The kindest word I could put on that, Madam Speaker, is nonsense. There are two laws that govern property tax. One is the Valuation of Land Act, and the other is the Property Tax Act. And if the member for Barataria San Juan had bothered to spend 5 minutes reading these two acts, he would see that in the definition section in the Valuation of Land Act, there's a definition of capital value. And if he bothered to go a little further into that law, he would see in section 5 that the Commission of Valuation shall make a valuation of the site value, improved value, or capital value, and annual rental value of every parcel of land or part thereof. And if he had gone a little deeper, Madam Speaker, into the schedule, he would see that there's a percentage that is applied to land to determine the annual rental value. For agricultural land, it's 2% of the capital value. For residential land, 3.5% of the capital value. Commercial, 5% of the capital value. Industrial, 5% of the capital value, and so on. And therefore, Madam Speaker, in order to establish the rental value of a property, you must first establish its capital value. And stamp duty is based on the capital value of the property. I sometimes wonder who wrote the exams in law school for these fellows, Madam Speaker, these honorable members. I wonder, because the law is clear. You establish the capital value and then apply a percentage to get the rental value, and the property tax is based on the rental value. It's here, like ABC, like primary school. The other inaccuracy stated by the honorable member was that We made a big song and dance about the leader of the opposition's plan to huff the money in the unit trust and the NIB. And he said that the Prime Minister didn't know what was going on because in the Roadmap Phase 2 report, it recommends using $3 billion from the unit trust to fund expenditure for 3 months. I have read the entire Phase 2 report twice. Today, it's not there. But in the event that I was wrong, I called the co-chairman of the Roadmap Committee. I said, go through every paragraph inside of there and see if you could find a statement saying that this government is going to take $3 billion from the unit trust to fund expenditure for 3 months. I am quite satisfied that that is simply untrue. It's just not there. Typical UNC, Madam Speaker. Now let me go to the member for Pointe-a-Pierre. I have a newspaper article here. Chief Whip questions fishy purchase of CL Marine. And what does he say? What are the allegations he makes? CL Marine has been losing millions every year. Unit Trust is holding a lot of debt on the shipyard. Why didn't I talk about the company in the budget statement? What is the plan? Let me deal with the facts, Madam Speaker. I have the official records. Let's start with allegation 1, false allegation 1. CL Marine has been losing millions every year. In 2014, Madam Speaker, CL Marine made a profit of $11.5 million. In 2016, CL Marine made a profit of $18.3 million. And in 2019, Madam Speaker, it lost $81,000. So how can a profit of 11 million, a profit of 18 million, and a loss of 81,000 be equivalent to it's losing $1 million every year? But that is typical UNC rhetoric, Madam Speaker. Typical UNC rhetoric. The other allegation, Unit Trust is holding a lot of debt on the shipyard, so why did we buy it? We go find ourselves in problems, Madam Speaker. The Unit Trust liability was settled years ago by CL Marine. There is no Unit Trust debt on CL Marine, Madam Speaker. And as we have said before, and I will repeat, acquisition of CL Marine deals with 3 policy objectives of this government. Firstly, it is part of the debt recovery from CLICO. And through the acquisition of CL Marine, we have been able to get an asset valued at $119 million, Madam Speaker. So we have in effect recovered $119 million of taxpayers' money through the acquisition of CL Marine. Secondly, it is public knowledge that 2 fast ferries are being constructed in Australia. One is getting ready to leave Australia at the end of October to get here before the end of the year. The other one shortly thereafter. One built by Austal, one built by Incat. There are 2 Cape-class military vessels being constructed by Austal as well, which will arrive next year, 2021. We have a number of Damen vessels. We have a number of other vessels belonging to the Coast Guard. And one of the strategic purposes of this acquisition is to consolidate the repair of our fleet, our marine fleet, at a single location at the dockyard in Chagaramas. And the third objective, of course, is diversification, Madam Speaker, because shipbuilding and ship repair is one of the areas that we have earmarked for diversification. So that deals with the statement from the member for Pointe-a-Pierre, the $2 million car man. Madam Speaker, I have really been heartened listening to commentary from all sectors of the society. I must say, I've been in this parliament now for 29 years, and this is a budget that has received such universal acclamation that I myself am surprised, Madam Speaker. I am surprised. From the $500 million allocation for farmers, and let me say two members on that side. I understand there was one member. I was not in this parliament, Madam Speaker. I must have been at the Ministry of Finance or something, doing some work, who indicated that I spoke untruths and there's no allocation in the budget of $500 million for agriculture. That is nonsense. And I would urge members opposite, go and read the documents. Some of you are new and you're taking basket from those remnants that have continued into this parliament on your side. There is a $500 million allocation, Madam Speaker, which has been placed for agriculture, for farmers, in the Ministry of Finance's allocation, Madam Speaker. And we put it that way because it is now up to the Ministry of Agriculture to come up with plans and proposals, detailed plans and proposals to access that $500 million. So as the Minister of Finance comes to Cabinet from time to time, he spoke about one of his plans yesterday in terms of access roads. So you may wish to spend $50 million on access roads. He comes to Cabinet, Cabinet agrees, and then the Ministry of Finance will disburse out of the $500 million. It's there in black and white for anybody who has eyes to see. But I heard the leader of the opposition say, that honourable member, can't find it in the budget. And then one of the newbies jumped in, Madam Speaker. One of the newbies jumped in and said they can't find it either. I will point it out during the Standing Finance Committee so that they could see with their own eyes that the $500 million is there in the Ministry of Finance's allocation. But from that $500 million, which is going to be used for a series of productive projects in the Ministry of Agriculture, running the entire gamut of support to the agriculture sector. We have also put $50 million, Madam Speaker, for export market promotion for the Ministry of Trade and Industry to allow our exporters to get accreditation and to penetrate overseas markets and to assist our exporters to penetrate overseas markets. We put $50 million in this budget for that, Madam Speaker. I didn't hear any of them talk about that. And then we have also decided to help first-time homeowners by increasing the allowance for stamp duty exemption from $1.5 million to $2 million, Madam Speaker. A series of incentives for construction, for property development and so on, Madam Speaker. A series of incentives for technology, the divestment of gas stations to the private sector with first preference going to dealers, the introduction of a private operator in the port, Madam Speaker. This budget has hit the mark in so many areas. It has excited so many people in this country. And therefore, I am humbled and pleased to be a member of this government. I have presented the budget, but the budget has been informed by many advisors, people from the private sector, people from the public sector, people from the university, from the government, etc. We had a very good team looking at what we should do, in consultation with the Prime Minister and other members of the government and so on, Madam Speaker. And before I conclude, I have been reminded that I should also thank the hard-working staff at the Ministry of Planning and Development for creating the PSIP for 2021. So I am overwhelmed by the support of the population for this budget. I'm overwhelmed at the excitement it has generated in the population. And I look forward to this year 2021, Madam Speaker, as we seek to find our way through this nightmare that is COVID. As I said, we may have to revisit some of our plans for the budget in the context of some of the advice we have received from senior practitioners and so on. As we go along, there's great uncertainty. In the United Kingdom, for example, the Chancellor cancelled the budget. So I wish to thank all members on this side who have contributed. I wish to thank all members of the government, all members of Parliament for contributing, and I beg to move, Madam Speaker.